Howdy, and welcome to Risky Standard, an actual play podcast featuring a rowdy group of best friends playing tabletop role-playing games together. I am your host and GM, Mitch Broesder. You can find me on Twitter at MagnesiumB, and you can find the show on Twitter at Standard Risky. With me today, I've got Pete Loftus.
That's right. And tonight I'm going to prove my worth on the field of foray.
And we've also got Malcolm Hall here.
Hey, Malcolm Hall here. Will my sleight of hand tricks work out well for the boys tonight? Only one way to find out.
Don't touch that dial.
And lastly, we have Timothy Mans.
I'm here, and I'm going to be doing a character that makes way more sense for the person I am as a human to play than the character I usually play. Or we can take that again if we don't want to disparage the characters.
No, the character's great. Today we are continuing our game of Beam Saber by Austin Ramsey. You can find Beam Saber on Austin's itch.io page. And you can also find some cool Beam Saber stuff on Austin's Patreon, which I don't have the address to in front of me because I just thought of it, but it does have, I think he just released a cool new expansion playbook for Beam Saber. There's a bunch of other ones available on there and some other cool stuff. So if you like Beam Saber, you should check that out as well. And while you're browsing the internet, there you go, yeah. while you're on the internet, while you're looking at that Patreon, maybe come check out our newly launched Discord, where we're hanging out and you can come talk about the show. You probably talk about Armored Core 6, because that came out last week as of this recording, and I've already sunk an embarrassing amount of hours into it, so come show us your Armored Core 6 recreations of your favorite show mechs.
I've also sunk a number of hours, and I guarantee I am much further behind in the overall plot, which has made me feel depressed, isolated, and largely worthless.
I don't know how to play video games or use Discord, so if anyone wants to teach me, please do.
I'm looking forward to playing Armored Core 6 in like 3 years.
We'll talk about it then.
I'm going to really enjoy it then.
It's great. But we can just debate the merits of it and all kinds of other things over at our Discord, which you can find a link to in the show notes. I think that's where we'll be putting it. Probably
that's
also
right.
You can find it on our Twitter, and I think that's our only social media right now. So you can find them in those places.
Exactly there.
But yeah, we're back today. We are continuing our mission of Beam Saber, our Beam Saber mission. The squad is at the Lost Crown Saloon, where they've been sent to retrieve and copy the personal network device of the Grenfield executive Sellers Montag without his notice. The squad has gained entrance to the saloon using Rhodes as an entrant in the sort of simulated mech warfare game of Foray. Carta and Desmond, disguised, were sent to a sort of meet and greet VIP event. Rhodes was brought up to the rooftop to meet the saloon's proprietor, Rebus Actual. And so when we had left off, that was basically Rhodes was about to take the elevator down with Rebus, while Carta and Des had kind of started laying the groundwork for creating a friendly relationship with the target to eventually open up the opportunity to snag that personal network device from his person. In relation to that, I guess I should point out the only clock that we have on the field at the moment, the thing that we're keeping track of, is that we have a friend with Sellers Montag clock, who is, again, the target of this mission. It is 1 out of 4 segments ticked currently, and when that clock has been filled, the squad will have sort of made a warm enough impression on Sellers as to open him up to some kind of like a closer movement to try and retrieve this device. I think you guys had mentioned maybe doing a photo op using Carta's disguise as Gall Teller. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, Gall Teller. Using his disguise as Gall Teller from the Sedge Sentinel to kind of do a photo op with Desmond, who is pretending to be, I didn't write these down, so this is off the dome.
A Siegfried Spendlove.
Yes, yeah. Yes. Exactly. And so you guys are kind of like sort of laying the groundwork there, and that's where we're going to kind of pick up at. So any questions or anything before we hop right back in?
Nah.
No.
So yeah, I think you and Rebus ride this elevator, this unmarked elevator. Remember, the interior has no controls or anything, right? But you step in. I don't even think Rebus says anything. I think Rebus makes like a gesture, and the elevator starts descending to the lily pad lounge, the VIP sort of floor of this saloon. So I think you have a moment here if you have any last words with Rebus. Otherwise, we are going to kind of move straight into him returning with Rhodes to this VIP meet and greet event.
Yeah, I think, I see like gestures, whatever. Like, I think Rose is collected a little bit since being pretty caught off guard by him telling me that he does actually know the deal or that like something is happening here. And I think, we probably like step in the elevator, and as it starts to rumble, is Rivers here too, or just Rebus?
I think River, the Kylaxian bodyguard, has not come down with you. I think it's just you two in the elevator.
Okay. So, I think we step in, and it's like a little awkward, like, like all elevators are, as we stand there, and it's like, bing, bing, as we're going through the floors. And I think after a moment, Rhodes, maybe clears his throat and says, I admire your candor and your transparency. And I know we discussed no specifics, but I also know that you're a man of the people, Mr. Actual.
One like arched eyebrow. I think, a little bit of an expression. It feels to him like you're about to say some shit that he doesn't really want to hear.
That's right. You've built something on the margins, a community around you, on the edges of two warring factions in a city pretty charged, and that's no simple feat. I, like you, seek a continuation of that peace. My colleagues, my entourage here with me, Gaul, Siegfried, are servants of that peace as well. I'll spare you the details, and I hope we can find a solution mutually beneficial. But know that they are friends of yours.
I have reached a point and place in my career. I no longer have friends as such. Colleagues, certainly. Folks that I do business with. But friends, not so much. If you can keep your business tonight quiet, I imagine that we might continue to have a mutually beneficial relationship going forward. But if you were to break the peace of this place, honor would demand that I level the playing field.
Naturally, I'd expect nothing less. I hope that all of your guests share the same sentiment.
As do I.
As the doors open.
Exactly, yeah, doors ding, right? And then I think, he leads you, along this mezzanine, across the other way, to the sort of curtain-drawn room where we saw earlier the various VIPs who've been invited to the private viewing of tonight's match have all been gathered. And I think Rebus, walks in through this like curtained archway with you, draws himself up a little bit, genially announces, "Excuse our late arrival, everyone. I was just gathering our final attendee for the subject of tonight's celebrations." And he steps slightly to the side, and gestures. I think he's taller than Rhodes. I think he's gesturing down to Rhodes a little bit. And he says, "Everyone, I give you the outlaw hero of the ring himself, Rhodes Rampart, a devil-may-care bandit who brings with him a bit of real-world experience to tonight's foray competition." And, there's like a very light scattering of polite applause at your entrance. And Rhodes, you can see on the far end of the room, we talked about it, right? There are these tabards hanging on the wall over the different stations where the competitors have been set up. And you can see your competition lined along the wall. You can see the black tabard with the Black Star Constellation symbol, at the back of the room, and a table with a projector for your mech for this foray experience, sitting on a table there.
I think Rose just sort of raises a hand, kind of just in greeting or whatever, patting down the not crowd that is not roaring,
Yeah. Sellers Montag, I think, leans over to you, Desmond / Siegfried, and I think he kind of elbows you in the side a little bit, or elbows you in your elbow, and is like, "That's your boy, huh?"
Yes, one of the best we have. I think you're going to find out what the ring man can really do in the ring.
Great.
And scene.
Well put.
And that's it. That's the session.
Keep it intentionally pared down just for suspense reasons.
No, and then I think, the room at this point, once the kind of moment of announcement has faded, the room kind of naturally breaks apart a little into like little clusters of conversation. Rebus Actual kind of moves over to quietly speak with the assistant who met you all at the door here earlier, this woman, Elodia Marin. We see Sellers Montag, accompanied by Python Noate, the bodyguard that he has with him, the synthetic with 4 arms and this kind of shabby brown suit. Those two, and I think also probably Gentian Net, the sort of purple slug man, who's kind of like a war profiteer we heard earlier. Those 3 kind of start moving in an orbit around the outside, kind of checking out the competitors' tables. And then we see, the other VIPs. There's this Concordat person, Almurakiet, the Chiropteran, a symbol that it has the single eye on a flying bat over a moon crossed out that caught your eye earlier does. Those 2 kind of wander off in a direction. Great. And then there's 2 others. There's two Lectorians, one of whom is a council person, and one of who is dressed in this kind of shabby, chic, a kind of older suit. Those 2 wander off as well, and so these groups are kind of scattered around the room. There's waiters coming in with hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and people are kind of talking. Some of them are starting to go to the different tables and talk to some of these competitors. And this is the first time, since you've talked to Rebus also, that I think, you have a moment, Rhodes, to chat with either Carter or Desmond if you so want to.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is like when you go to a party with a bunch of friends and it's you have a minute before everything kind of piles in on you, and it's exit the elevator. I'm beelining for the 2 people that I know. I don't know. What are we drinking?
That's a great question, right? Like I said, I think it's probably various here anything, right? There's obviously Iberian, basin specialties, right? Kelp beers we've talked about, cactus fruit, fermented cactus fruit wines and liquors. But Rebus has a tight line on off-world stuff, right? So there's probably some kind of lovely Concordat wine, I imagine.
Yeah.
Some of the standard Commonwealth liquors. I don't really, I don't have alien liquors offhand. There's Vesperian ices. There's
Vesper ice.
Vesper Light, I think is what it is.
Vesper Light. Vesper Light's getting cracked everywhere. I imagine you're probably not drinking Vesper Light if you're in the VIP lounge of the Lost.
It's on offer though,
if you wanted it, you could get it. Yeah.
Dez is drinking the tiniest little glass of port. A nice tawny port, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an off-worlder for sure.
Rhodes sort of beelines to the 2 of you, checks to make sure you're not drinking Concordat rich wines, perfumed wines.
Yeah.
And I think just kind of rushes over to the 2 of you and in a hushed whisper says, "Actual knows. I don't know how. He's aware. So watch your back."
Aware how?
I'm not sure.
How much?
I'm not sure. Enough. All I got was that he knows something's going down and that he seems neutral at best. So don't cross him.
Oh, I know that he would know. But just don't step on his toes. He won't step on ours. It's the way of the streets. It's the code.
One thing he said to me was just ensure that we maintain the peace. I think we can trust the 2 of you to keep our buddy happy here. Don't blow it. I'm going to go mix a bit.
Yeah, Carta puts down the rich Concordat wine and and he pours it out and pours a Vesper Light into the glass.
Put that down. Put that down.
So he's not drinking stuff so heavy.
Looks better on you.
Yeah. If you're headed back out, I think that maybe is Carta talking to Des, just being we can't break the peace, but we've got to make it enough of a party to keep him otherwise occupied. If we can keep him feeling like he's having fun and we keep him engaged, betting, whatever it is, the quicker it's going to be for you to slip in there, get something, get out. I can try to buy you as much time as you need to do that, and I can try to help you get as close as you can. But I think we gotta make that happen quick, so that we have the rest of the night for the right time to present itself.
Okay.
Break to go work the room.
Yeah, I think, like I said, there's like a place that Rhodes is kind of expected to be at, right? There's like a table at the back that has like your foray projector that has like your banner and things. And I think, the pilots are kind of being put at the wall of the room so that these VIPs get the chance to meet each of you. This is right. This is the meet and greet portion of that.
Okay, so then I guess we'd kind of slide back there. I was gonna maybe try and talk to another pilot, but if the idea from Rebus is that we should like park a bit, then I'm cool setting up like our booth.
I mean, I think that's like the event structure. I don't think anyone's going to yell at Rhodes if Rhodes goes to speak to another pilot.
Mm-hmm. I think then in that case, maybe before I work over to the booth, I'm gonna beeline to Palace again, who's the Concordat person, right? A human Concordat pilot, a lay person.
Like I said, they are wearing, I think, just kind of like a simple white tunic. I imagine like a rough like jute or like rope belt, right? I think that they have like a shaved head, maybe like lightly adorned, I think with like tattoos. I think you can see coming out from under like the sleeves of their tunic up their arms that are this kind of like runic or like glyph like writing that has kind of like a faint shimmer to it, which I think you've seen on a few other Concordat like soldiers and people at this point before. They, are standing, not with their eyes closed, but I think like in a very calm, like repose, just sort of standing their hands clasped in front of themselves. You can see their projector with like their projection on the table next to them. I think I said this before. They are piloting a modified Caesura unit. And the Caesura has like a large physical sword that it is holding kind of plunged into the ground in front of it. This is kind of its like idle animation, right? Is like holding this sword in front of it. That's like the display.
So slowly spins or something. Yeah.
And they, I think, look at you as you're approaching. I don't think that they would say anything. I think they would address you at first, right? But I think, they kind of fix their eyes on you with like a steely gaze as you approach.
Do they have an entourage or just hanging out here solo?
They are just hanging out here solo. I think some of the other pilots have like, a few people near them, like tech squads, probably I imagine like, Perel Three-Tide, this like 4A champion. She has like someone who is like handing out like photos that she is autographing if people want them, right? But I think Palace, again, they are just standing here by themselves at the table.
And I think that like neither one of us says anything, right? Like as we kind of stand up, and I think I'm probably like maybe 5 feet away, probably walking up, just sort of folding arms as we size each other up. And I think just say like, just wanted to get a good look. It's a Caesura, isn't it?
I think Palace again starts to open their mouth to speak, but before they can say anything, another voice cuts into the conversation, and it is the voice of this woman, Almuric Yet, the Concordat cleric, in this like fine, like purple robe with this gold embroidery, who I think it's like laden with jewelry, with these rings, this like tiara with like the 7-spoked wheel symbol, and this gold pendant that says like the swirling quicksilver in it. And so I think she is the one who speaks, before Palace again can say anything. And she says, looking at you, Rhodes Rampart, the betrayer of Feldspar. No?
Betrayer, eh? Feldspar's a ruin, last I checked.
So it is you then?
Of course it's me.
And she nods, and then I think turns from you and approaches Palace again, and kind of takes them up in conversation, kind of like cutting you out, right?
Excuse me. We're hoping to speak pilot to pilot if your dog can speak on free will.
And I think she says something to Palace again and then steps aside. And Palace again says, looking at you, we will have our debate on the battlefield.
Spare me the theatrics. I came to say, the Concordat produces an astounding machine. I've seen pilots do things I thought not possible. I'm impressed to see one here at a foray match, and I wish you good luck. I think you'll need it.
Stone-faced, right? Kind of hands or arms crossed across the chest again, kind of resumes this impassive position.
And your name, cleric?
I think you ask her name, though, and then behind you, You feel the shifting of bulk as Rebus Actual kind of steps up beside and behind you and places one hand on your shoulder. Ah, Rhodes, Ingratiate, a cleric from the other side. I'm glad that we're fostering such a dialogue here tonight, but please, you're needed over at your station. There are many here who would like to meet you this evening. I don't want you to get monopolized one way or the other.
Of course. Merely enjoying some neutrality, such a space affords. Again, best of luck. I'm needed elsewhere.
I think as you two turn away and towards the table where your gear is set up at, Rebus kind of just gives you a little bit of like a withering look, under his breath, like, keeping the peace, remember.
Keeping the peace.
And then, I think, this event kind of continues on. I'm kind of curious what moves our operatives in disguise are making here.
Our boy Sellers Montag, is he just kind of milling about, going pilot to pilot, introducing, what's his situation?
Yeah, I think it's him, and like I said, Gentian Net. Those two with Sellers as a sort of bodyguard, kind of tailing them close behind. And I think, they've started on the outside circle, and they are just kind of like moving, very slowly from like pilot to pilot. They're drinking, they're talking, and I think you hear Gentian Net carrying on. They're talking about the Ember question, whatever that means to them. But I think they are, kind of doing the thing that they are meant to be doing here,
right?
Which is just like meeting the pilots, eating some food and getting drunk before it's time to go to the box and watch the match.
Okay. Well, they get to the Palace Again's booth and kind of there, and they're about to head away. I think as Gentian and so they're walking around, Carta kind of like saunters up and peeks his head in and goes, I heard that they lose. There is a little bit of a punishment that comes with that. How do you think that's going to affect the way they play?
Sellers Montag is probably like, it's just like in like life.
So true.
Then this is no offense to you. And he kind of gestures at you, Gaul. But there's nothing. You're only going to work hard if you've got something to lose. And this is the problem with the ring can never amount to anything, right? And there's nothing to lose. You just get the lowest common denominator across everyone, and there's no risk, no reward to it.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're not so barbaric as to punish our pilots if they're not going to win. But you look at someone over here like Sunder Fairside, greatest marksman on Ember, and she knows she's going to get sponsorship deals if she succeeds here. She knows she has so much to gain in terms of reputation, in terms of money. If she can really come through and win this turn, there's something to win-lose there. But you're, again, no offense to you,
none taken.
But your guy over here, he's not. If he loses, he just goes back to getting the same slop as everyone else. He gets a cot in a dormitory. I hear it's dormitories down in Sedge. There's nothing for him to win here because there's nothing to lose either. You spend a little time around here, you might just start to understand it a little bit better. But
I, my friend, feel like there's a lot I can learn from you. Now, when you say, that there's, if they don't have something to lose, I mean, we only got one bet tonight. Anyone got any other kind of prop bets they want to make? I've got a few ideas of things that could make this night a little bit more interesting. Everyone walks away with a little bit more chance to have some jingle in the pocket and, reason not to pick some losers.
Sellers Montag kind of looks around the room a little bit. He looks specifically over at where Rebus Actual is. Talking about a little bit of a side bet here.
All I'm saying is I think it could make an already very pleasant night into something to really remember. Everyone could benefit if they got the money to.
At this moment, the bodyguard robot, who I don't know if I can't remember if he was introduced last episode or not. I have not actually listened to all of last episode for this, but if we hadn't, his bodyguard is Python Noate, is this gentleman robot's name. I think Python Noate kind of leans in and says, "Sir, I do believe all betting is to be done through Mr. Actual's agents at this event. And so I think if you want to get on Seller's good side by getting him to join in a bet here with you, there has to be a roll, right? That's
Sure. Yeah. I'm trying to. Maybe there's like a. Of course. We would love to do things by the book. Takes out a piece of paper from his pocket. He's a journalist. Writes down. Is there like a? I don't know if you can hand someone like your phone number, but it's like if we don't want to talk about this out loud.
Your like network identification ID.
Yeah, something like. Of course, nothing that would upset you, sir. But I would love to hear your thoughts about how many of the different situations that come with a game like 4A might play out. I'm going to get some more Concordat wine. Anyone need anything? That stuff is insane, right?
So are you trying to convince him here to like do a side bet with you as like a...
Yeah.
Are you working on this clock, I guess, is like...
Yes. It is trying to convince him by like giving him like, business card with the name on it, where it's not saying it out loud in front of the bodyguard, but with enough.
Yeah. I that's what I'm picking up. I just want to make sure. So let's talk about what that role looks like here.
I'm going to say consort probably, because that's what I got a dot in. But I think that's going to be my best bet, that it's just trying to use the kind of like smooth talking to get a man who likes to gamble to want to gamble more and up the risk by doing something that is also maybe kind of not allowed.
Yes. So when you consort, you mingle with allies and acquaintances. It says a few other things here, but it says you could try to persuade someone with social pressure, but sway might be better. And so I think what that means here for me is that with consort out of the gate, this is controlled but limited effect to start.
Okay.
If this could be a situation, you could push yourself for greater effect. If you wanted to use sway, I would say it would be standard effect instead of limited. And what that looks like, again, here, when we say limited versus standard effect, limited effect is only going to tick one segment on this clock if you succeed. Standard effect will tick 2 segments on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are different ways you could increase effect here, in terms of fictional positioning. If you had a piece of gear somehow that you think could give you increased effect, I would take that into calculation.
All right, I'm just going to go and consort with the one. I think that's just kind of, I'm going to push myself for this. It's we got a night to talk to this man, and just keep chipping away at it, I guess. So just rolling.
So starting off, this is controlled, limited effect. You have 1 dice in consort. You could always push yourself here. I could offer you a devil's bargain.
I think I'm just going to do the one.
Yeah, to go run. Yeah, you're a controlled situation.
All right. Here we go. 1d6. Oh, that is a 1. That is no bueno.
All right, that is a failure, straight out of the bet. So I think on a controlled failure, the pilot falters. They can press on by seizing a risky opportunity or withdraw and try a different approach in action. What that looks like here is, you start to hand the card over towards Sellers Montag, and I think he raises a hand up and he's, friend, that's kind of you, but from the ring, I don't know, you're betting quite the kind of game that I'm playing at. I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze there, and I wouldn't want to impugn on the graciousness of our good host. And I think, he looks to Rebus Actual, kind of across the room. And then I think he also kind of a little bit more subtly indicates his head towards Rebus's assistant, Elodia Marin, who I think you see, I think it was described before as kind of walking around with this like mechanical techno clipboard thing. I think you can see that she has, she's looking in the direction of your group. She's across the room, but it's as if she has psychically sensed that there is someone trying to break the rules of the Lost Crown Saloon right now. And so she is now paying attention in your direction, although she is not right next to you. So if you wanted to take another stab at this roll, you would be welcome to do so, like right away, but it would be at a risky position as opposed to your current controlled.
No, I think that it is recognized very quickly that Carta is out of his depth in regards to, probably don't want to upset the house if we want to try to get away with doing this without being noticed. And he goes, understood. You're a man who knows. You've been here more than I have. I'm an idiot. I hate to see people leave money on the table.
And so, I think I'm going to zoom out a second here, but I think, this evening is kind of continuing this way. They're moving across the tables. Where is Siegfried at? What is Desmond doing at the moment? I think you watch Carta kind of maybe make this first failed attempt at ingratiating himself to Sellers, and you can see him get rebuffed a little bit.
Well, I'd like to get a little closer to him too. I think that's strategic. I want to see where he's keeping, the thing that I'm trying to take off from him. I don't even know where it is on his person. So I'd like to at least get that figured out.
Yeah, do people check these like they do we do cell phones, where it's like you pull it out and you're looking at something? I know it's maybe his work version, but is that do we see people doing that?
I think so, but I don't think you've seen it yet with Sellers per se. Yeah, so maybe we catch him, just to get it together. Maybe you see him and Genti and Net. They kind of start. They've stopped at Palace Again's table. They've had this interaction with Carta, and now they're walking over towards Rhodes's zone. Rhodes's little setup. Like merch booth kind of thing.
Yeah, like giving out brochures on the ring.
Yeah. Right.
Curious about joining the ring? No.
Yeah. I don't think this crowd is, but So I think you see them. They kind of move on, and as they're about to head to Rhodes' table, and they've stopped for a moment. They're getting a refreshment of cocktails and hors d'oeuvres before they walk over towards to meet the outlaw hero Rhodes Rampart. This kind of dark horse of the tournament. So I think you've got an opening either when they get there or before they get there, kind of whatever Siegfried is feeling.
I'm going to go in before, in that case, and if it gets awkward, I can dip out and be like, oh, let me introduce you to my friend or whatever.
So what is Siegfried's approach here?
I'm going to walk up and be like, Mr. Sellers, I've heard a great deal of your exploits and the things that you've built. I was wondering, what is the latest thing you've been working on?
And I think, Genti and Net kind of looks at you as you approach. Well, he's rather straightforward now, isn't he? And Sellers, I think, kind of raises his hands in modesty a little bit. And I think he's gotten a little rosy in the cheeks slightly. I think he's already a couple cocktails into the evening, perhaps. And, he says, well, Grenfield is always on the up. It's nothing to say that we were the ones who, for all intents and purposes, discovered what Imber was worth, what here was worth actually exploring or looking at. Just a bunch of Triops farmers before we arrived. But I don't think, and he, kind of gestures back to his sort of looming bodyguard. I don't think the higher ups would appreciate me sharing our latest and greatest with ring cultural liaisons, whatever that means.
Oh, I'm sure whatever you've done, sir, is not so impressive that you can't share even the vaguest, information with me. What could you have possibly done that I could use against you, sir? If that's a simple question, what kind of projects? I could share all kinds of things I've done lately.
In the spirit of your great and generous culture, why don't we share and share alike, Mr. Spenlove, was it?
Yeah, Siegfried, please.
Siegfried. What has the ring accomplished in its brief stint here on Imber, besides sowing chaos and stopping the March of Progress?
Oh, the March of Progress. Oh, we've fed people and clothed them and housed them. It's no small feat.
Any man or woman who works in the Commonwealth could be fed and housed just the same.
Just the same?
They'd be working towards something as well. Yeah, well, if they work hard enough, obviously.
Oh, I mean, I was just wondering what kind of places you've been and what have you seen to know the real value and the real worth of this place. You've done the surveying yourself?
No, it's always, you know how this is.
No?
I'm sure, cultural liaison, you're not out there tilling the fields yourself. We have surveyors who go out and look at things, families of this such and sort. I'm about a bigger picture for Ember. I'm an executive. I have a bit of a vision for how the thing goes. I don't pull out my little scope and look over the hill and say, there's orichalcum in these hills.
So you're a dreamer. Am I to believe that you're a dreamer, sir?
Something like that for sure.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a dreamer too. Last night I dreamt of a gilded dunghill. Is that something you've dreamt up?
Carta is but Carta is over there pretending to eat like a pile, like a comically large pile of like, I don't know, whatever Ember's version of shrimp is, and just like every tail
Dune shrimp,
yeah.
Can we roll to see if that joke landed?
It's a 6 over here.
Yeah. I think Gentian Nat, kind of leans in and says, "Gentlemen, let's not forget tonight's about foray. It is not about the respective ideologies of our chosen factions, our employers, or our lack thereof." And he gestures at Siegfried.
Gentian is a solidly grill-pilled NPC.
Yeah.
He's just out here to have a good time.
Yeah. Who all are we rooting for tonight? Are you pulling for your man, Siegfried?
Oh, absolutely. Let's not, ideologies aside, he is the best there is. And I'm not fucking around when I say that.
And I think, Sellers...
I get a little bit closer to him when I say it. It's like, I'm serious. I'm not fucking around with you, sir. This man's the best goddamn pilot this side of the galaxy. I'm terrified of him. I'm absolutely terrified of him. He could kill all of us if he wanted to, but he doesn't.
And I think Sellers Montag, says, well, he's sure... I'll give you this. From what I've read, he seems a mean hand in the mech, but, he's not a 4A player, per se. Is he... Does the battlefield translate to the game board? I guess that's the question, isn't it?
I think as we're talking, like camera pans over to like Rhodes talking or something. And we were just talking about this last time, but like awkward chest handshakes. It's like camera pans. It's like Rhodes is just blowing like a handshake with someone.
Yeah, it's Ignis Tragat, the Chiropteran politician, who is also not sure how to thread that conversation.
It's like, well, I believe it's not a 1-to-1 ratio of experiences one could have as foray on the battlefield. I'm sure it's more nuanced explanation than that. Well, we could ask the man himself. Mr. Rhodes, Mr. Rampart, let me introduce you to some friends here.
I think the group comes over towards where Rhodes is. You guys kind of walk over with your drinks to Rhodes' table.
Greetings. Yes. Hello. I think this meet and greet is a bit long. Your friends, Siegfried?
Well, yeah, we've just met. Acquaintances. Would you say that we're acquaintances, Mr. Sellers? Would you say that?
I think we can safely say we've reached that point.
I would
Certainly.
say, as even though you're a proprietarian, I do enjoy your company very much, sir, and I hope that you feel the same way.
Sellers, was it? A fitting name.
And he turns to you. Sellers Montag. Yes, I am a bloodthirsty capitalist, you could say. Devout and true, Commonwealth born and raised. I'm afraid you won't catch me won over with any shows of valor tonight, Mr. Rampart. Though I do look forward to seeing you on the battlefield.
As do I, if all things go my way.
I think like kind of like a quick glance back to his bodyguard robot behind him.
I think Rhodes would like probably not extend a handshake to Sellers or anyone else here, but probably extend a hand to the bodyguard, another synthetic who I think Rhodes like is probably clued into right away. He said, and you, my four-armed friend, your name?
And Sellers pipes up. This is Python Noade. He's company man here to ensure my safety around all these scallywags. And he kind of bumps his elbow against Siegfried here. Not very social, I'm afraid, are you, Python? And I think, this bodyguard kind of, like I said, 4 arms, all 4 kind of behind his back, stands there impassively, does not shake your hand, but gives you like a very subtle, very small nod of like acknowledgement.
Rhodes, maybe holds the hand out for a second before withdrawing and says, well, we'll work on that.
So I guess the question here is, how are you guys working on this clock here, if that is the case?
Are the passing insults not ticking segments?
The clock is called Friends with Sellers Montag, and I feel like I don't know. We could also do like a broader role here
what is a little ball busting amongst friends? I think
exactly.
I think we're in gentle ribbing.
Yeah, I think.
I have an idea, but go ahead.
Well, I was just saying. I think like there could be like a role here that kind of covers the broader strokes of this conversation, if you want, which is just like, is this effective? Are you being charming, or are you being kind of like a jerk who just keeps insulting the guy? We can make a role here for that. If you're, I just do want us to try and, for your sake, I want you to get some work in on this clock so that you are able to get into position to do the thing you're trying to do. So I don't know if there's a specific gambit or if that is, like I said, kind of a role that represents the broader kind of scope of this conversation.
I was thinking of talking shop with Sellers and just jumping into mech designs and recent like foray exhibition matches that like were of interest. Like, basically just like kind of drumming up like common interests, where it's like, well, has Grenfield ever thought about entering, the actual like frame game? Like what's in R&D, like we're like maybe just like, I'm not going to tell him anything about our side, but like trying to just get him to talk about stuff we both know. I'm cool with doing like a fast forward roll here that gives us some insight there, but you guys are mostly leading this conversation. I'm just
my attempts so far have not gone great, and it's crazy because it's almost like I don't have any skill points there. But
I've got one, right? Like I want to try to position a sway roll with Sellers. It's like, Sellers, you're something of a patron of the arts. Who is it you favor tonight?
Could this be, since you have, since Siegfried is there also, could this be like a group sway roll?
Yeah.
Does that make sense, since you guys have both been having this conversation kind of like collectively?
Yeah.
What I want is for Sellers to identify an underdog and root for them, which is maybe us. I don't know.
Who is Sellers rooting for? I think, Sellers again motions across the room to, Sunder Fairside, this Lectorian pilot, who is a member of a Commonwealth like military unit, right? She's a member of this group called the Golden Bayonets, who I think you would know just from like intel you would have. The Golden Bayonets are kind of like a squad of ace pilots in the Lectorian, like the Commonwealth military here on Imber. And they are all like, all the members of the unit are kind of like, the scions of wealthy families, right? They all are like kind of inheritors and heirs to fortunes. So they all pilot extremely high-end mechs. I think, Sellers says, well, I've placed my initial bets over on Sunder Fairside. They say she's the best shot in the basin. I've seen her reports of her work on the battlefield, and I've seen her in more than one foray match, and I've never been disappointed or unimpressed. I think strategy-wise, she's got a range to her. It gives her a little bit of advantage against some of the other machines I've seen so far, but I also admit I've never seen you on the foray table. I wouldn't know how to begin to guess how you're going to play tonight, Mr. Rampart.
Oh, Fairside's a formidable opponent. Sure, I mean, I haven't crossed swords personally, but the Golden Bayonet's reputation precedes. I've no doubt a serious gamer. Whether that holds up on the field of battle, yet to be seen. I did notice Fairside's machine is running pennyroyal arms.
Not unusual.
That's probably a mark in her favor. Let's see if it holds up to scrutiny.
Let's talk about a roll here. What is this?
I'm seeing this like as sway, and I'm trying to plant a seed that all of the expensive toys doesn't outweigh battlefield prowess. What are we swaying towards? The hard thing is I don't think Sellers is going to root for our team.
Well, so I think the thing that we established a clock last session that we kind of titled glibly like Friends of Sellers, but I think the goal was to create a friendly enough atmosphere around him that you would be capable of engineering a situation where you can get physically close enough to him to try and take something from him, right? That was my understanding of that when we established it last time.
That was my understanding as well.
Maybe then the sway is with Sellers. Well, you're going to want the ring entourage close, because a lot of the strategy that you're going to see is unprecedented. Or you may want a interpreter to help understand some of the play and the strategy on the field, at least from the ring side. We're masters of asymmetric combat.
And I think maybe this is like Sellers, Montag looking at Siegfried. Is that true, Mr. Spenlove? Are you enough of an expert viewer of the foray board? You give me an insight into your champion here's unusual maneuvers?
Well, yes, I studied at the academy. I know of intricate details of these things.
Siegfried and I were trainees at the War College. Siegfried has a keen sense of battlefield tactic. I'm sure it would be interesting for you as a gambler and a player to get those kind of prescient insights.
So yeah, maybe this is a group sway action.
Yep, it is.
Does that make sense to you guys? So the way group actions work, again, is that one person decides to be the leader of a group action. Everyone who's involved, they roll the same action. And as long as one person succeeds, the entire group succeeds. But for every failure, the leader of the group action takes one stress. I think we talked about this as like a sway. This sounds like sway to me.
I have one in sway, but I don't want to take more stress in case I need to push. Do you have anything in sway, Des? Yeah, we both have one pip.
Yes.
So who is leading this group action?
I think Siegfried.
Sure.
You're taking like the lead of this conversation. You are going to be the one who takes the stress here.
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, so out of the gate, this is, still, I think for you guys, controlled standard effect. You're each starting with one dice for sway. If anyone wants to push themselves here, that is on the table. Like the usual things here, if you want to get more dice, are available to you. Otherwise, we could each roll one and see how the dice go.
I would like to... I'm already got stress on the line. I guess I'll just keep it at that.
So you're each rolling one dice?
Yeah.
All right. Then go ahead and each of you roll 1d6, and we will see if you are able to convince him that Siegfried is enough of an expert on the foray tactics of the ring that he's worth sticking around and listening to.
Yeah, 3.
6.
Hey, that's
Nice.
6.
All right.
So Siegfried, you do take one stress, but that is 2 segments ticked on the Friends with Sellers clock. So you are now at 3 out of 4 segments. What is the thing that Siegfried does? Like, what do you say, or what's like the thing that you give him that like really pitches Sellers on the fact that like, oh yeah, I should stick with this guy. He knows what he's talking about.
Oh, what do I say that makes him think? I was kind of wanted to say like, you're not going to have an opportunity like this. This is a once in a probably a lifetime opportunity to see like how the sausage is made when it comes to whatever our particular brand of asymmetrical warfare, and an insight as to like how the whatever communalist brain works. I guess I kind of wanted to pitch to him as like sort of like a novelty, but I don't know. I guess if
no, I think that works. Yeah, I think that works. Like like so. I think he's there. He's I suppose. They say it doesn't in war and in business. It's good to know how your enemies think. I've had my fair share of the analysis of the field from the usual formats. You really think your boy here has a chance of winning tonight?
Absolutely. Without a doubt in my mind, sir.
Well, hell, if nothing else at the office next week, it'll be fun to tell stories about drinking with ring scum watching a 4A match in the house of Rebus Actual himself.
I think a real big smile comes across Desmond's face. He knows he's like, okay, we got him.
Yeah, and I think he says,
Yeah.
I'll sit with you. So this clock is almost full, right? It's 3 out of 4 segments, and I think, he says, we'll sit together during the match. You can elucidate me on the finer points of strategy for as long as your man's able to stay in the match, at least. I'm sorry, 1 second. And he reaches into the inside jacket of this suit that he's wearing, and he pulls out, I think, what looks kind of like a leather-bound notebook. But he flips it open, tucks this back against the side, and you can see that the thing on the inside, I think, has hard mechanical keys and an inset small CRT monitor, right? And you can see that this is, of course, the thing you're here for. This is his personal network device. And, I think he hits a few things and then slides something across the top and then shuts it closed again. And I think as he shuts it closed, you hear the quiet, minute, but unmistakable sound of a locking mechanism activating. And then he tucks it back into the inside pocket of his jacket. And he says, I told them all I was not to be bothered tonight. I was taking an evening for myself. And yet, of course, in my world, the demands of work never end. Maybe that's a difference between yours and mine.
And I'd probably say something like, no, you'd be surprised.
And then at this point, Rebus Actual kind of claps his hands together in the center of the room and says, well, this has been lovely, and I hope you've all had a chance to meet the competitors that we will see this evening, get a chance to know them and really figure out who you're rooting for tonight. The time has come. Our competitors must prepare themselves for the arena, and we must adjourn to my private viewing balcony to set ourselves up with more to eat, more to drink, and more chances to place bets on the wondrous competition we're about to see tonight. So if everyone would gather themselves, we can head that way, and sooner than not, the Diadem Royale will begin. And with that, this portion of the night begins to end, right? Everyone starts to the VIPs are kind of grouped together to be led towards, like I said, eventually the private viewing box of Rebus Actual, while I think assistants start coming together to gather the competitors to bring you towards the staging area for the match. So I think there's a beat here where the squad can speak to each other in person again before your guys are about to be split up once more. I don't know if there's anything you want to say or if we just continue on into the next segment unabated.
No, let's just go.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the meet and greet ends, and then, we can kind of move through this in a little montagey, and if anyone wants to butt their heads in, just say something. But otherwise, I'm going to assume these things kind of just roll forward. The competitors are brought through one of the back staff hallways downstairs, and are brought not directly into the arena, but I think you are actually, you do take a staircase or an elevator down a half floor at one point, because the staging area for the pilots is actually underneath the arena. There are 6 kind of not pods, but half pods. They're kind of a cutout interior of a cockpit with a seat that you're going to stand in, a control board that we brought swing in front of you. I think a spot in front of you where your projector is mounted, and then I think a kind of helmet that is brought over the head to grant the full immersive kind of VR experience of this holographic game. And I think it's clear some of the other competitors' pods are customized already with some of their personal 4A gear that has been brought to the venue, right? I think we see for instance, Sunder Fairside, the Commonwealth competitor, her pod seat and everything are all branded Penny Royal Arms, probably Penny Royal Armigers. And so you get a sense, some of these people have done a little bit more work ahead of time preparing their personal setup. But there are basically 6 of these pods arranged. There's between the front and the back of them, there's maybe about a football field's width. It's a pretty big underneath area, but you can see these pods are going to lift up through the bottom of the floor into the arena above. And so there's kind of a tech check that is happening down here, where each of you is kind of assigned to your pod, and the teams are kind of going over your connections and putting your projections into place. And there's just kind of this this period of getting ready down there. And while that is happening, the VIPs with Gaul and Siegfried in tow, are walked through the large wooden double doors that give you entrance into the Diadem arena, where the Diadem Royale will be taking place tonight. And I think we get kind of like a big wide view of this place as we come in. And it is, like kind of an amphitheater that is built around, I think the entire floor is kind of like in a slightly oval shape that is currently like a green and blue glass grid across the entire floor. There's nothing currently happening on this floor. But it is, I think in moments going to come to life with the holographic projections that are the game of Foray. But right now it is this grid, this glass grid on a floor, and you can see 6 empty places, these kind of alcoves at the base of the arena around the sides of this board, where the pilot's seats are presumably going to come up. And there's already a crowd here, right? There's like this amphitheater that is full. The seats are full. I think there are also mounted on the walls around you, right? The big, enormous screens that are currently flickering between still images of the pilots and statistics about the machines that they're using, their win records in previous games, things like that, right? Just kind of like a pre-game reel that's playing. But I think you were brought here and then through a rear set of staircases up into a kind of closed off set of hallways that eventually lead you up and then back out again into centrally located, looking out over the field below, this large balcony that I think has several different tables with long seating cushions around them. There are at the back of it refreshments. There is food there. There is a small fleet of attendants ready to greet these VIPs as you arrive at the balcony. There is a large gilded, probably bejeweled seat cushion for Rebus Actual, kind of at the highest point at the rear of the room. I think the balcony is probably tiered a little bit, right? I think that there are 2 armed guards inside this room as well, just in the maroon uniforms that we've seen across the entire staff here at the Lost Crown Saloon. Although I think these 2 are, like I said, wearing holstered pistols here. And I think the Kylaxian, this large stone person, River, Rebus Actual's personal bodyguard, is already here in the booth when everyone else arrives. And yeah, I think, you are all kind of people kind of naturally break up into clusters of seating. I think that there is at least 2 or 3 attendants at the back of the room who have similar kind of tallying tablet devices to the one you saw Elodia Marin with earlier. And these are, bookkeepers. They are taking bets, and new bets as, I think Gentian Net and some of the others are already kind of shouting at each other and placing bets on different competitors or bets on who's going to go out first, things like that. There's already starting to be a little bit of a, I think everyone here is getting a little restless. You're so close to the event. And then, I think unless there's any interruption here, I imagine Rebus is going to head to the front of the balcony and start to kind of open the ceremonies. I think Peter's muted because it seems like he's talking, but I don't hear anything.
Yes, I am. I was thinking in the, kind of this entrance area, the pilot kind of pen. I think as Rhodes sort of looks around, there's all these attendants fitting them. Rhodes doesn't have that, right? I think is sort of donning the helmet and setting up the controls and probably, dialing in the configurations. And I think at this moment, while everyone's kind of preoccupied, can I pull a flashback?
Yeah. What do you do?
I want to pull a USB drive, a little insert or something into this console to plug in. I forget the flashback rules. Do I have to roll?
No. So there's you flashback and you don't have to roll to flashback. When you flash back, you are flashing back to either maybe do something that would require a roll, or, you can kind of talk about what you're trying to achieve with the flashback, but it might lead to either you having to make a roll, or, if you're getting something, it might be flashing back to acquiring a downtime action, you acquiring an asset.
Yeah.
And you do have to spend stress. The less likely the flashback is, or the more difficult the flashback would have been to achieve, the more stress it costs. So a flashback that could have just happened easily, that would have made sense in the fiction. We just didn't the camera never went there. That's a 0 stress flashback. Whereas a thing that would have required extensive planning, or would have been a very unlikely plan to have already put into place, might require 1 or 2 stress, depending on how out of left field it is. So let's talk about what are you flashing back to?
I want to flash back to reaching out to someone who would be like a fixer in like a digital space, who can like set up and essentially like respec the standard model that Rhodes is like ostensibly piloting here to be able to pull on some of the Redshifts ability.
Is this like an NPC that you have in mind, or is this
Yeah,
someone that we've met already?
I think I declared this as a pilot or as a contact in my pilot sheet, where we have Sphinx Black, who's like a I think like loosely ring affiliated, but too anonymous to be certain, like hacker character, who's someone who like probably operates somewhere like in the murkiness of the ring's like intranet. Who's someone we maybe like have never met in person, but someone who Rhodes knows from really just in like mech work and taking mercenary jobs.
And so you are reaching back out so that they can, like you said, create like a digital version of the Redshift for this tournament. That's like the thing.
Yeah.
This sounds to me like acquiring an asset, which does require spending a supply point for an extra downtime action. But I don't think there would be any stress for this flashback, because I think it makes sense that you would have done this.
Okay, cool.
So I think it would require one material supply point, which you have 2 of.
Okay. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take one of those material down.
And because you have the ability Pack Rats, your FOB is a jumble of requisitioned items. When you roll to acquire an asset, take 1d, plus 1d rather. And so normally when you acquire an asset, you roll the squad's tier, and the result indicates the quality of the asset you get. Since your squad tier is still 0, although it probably won't be after this mission, you would normally be rolling 2 dice and taking the lowest result. But because of that ability, you're actually going to start off rolling 1 die here. And you could spend more material to get more dice, but I think as is, this, I think you're going to get this no matter what, but the success of this roll here will kind of give us some fictional information about the quality of this like hacked replication that you get.
Okay, so I'm rolling 1d6. Fuck, it's a 1.
Oh, it is. So that is a tier -1, which is, I don't think we have to like role play a whole scene here, but maybe you get like we get in this flashback, right? We get the shot of like Rhodes unwrapping like the like paper wrapper that this USB device has been like sent in. And there's like a little holographic message attached to it when you first like unveil it. And it is this, I think Sphinx Black's like digital avatar is this like humanoid form made of like quartz, kind of like floating in kind of a nebulous ether.
What if it's like literally a sphinx? Like like the avatar is like a little sphinx shape. That same, I love the quartz, like that's tight.
But it's them, saying like, not a lot of time to get this out to you. Can't guarantee the quality. Did the best I could. Something like that. You know what I mean? Because like you had a week between like when you got the invite to this tournament and were competing in it. I think it's a pretty, like this is a quick turnaround for this like this modded thing. So I think we get that, and then like the shot of you holding that, cuts to the shot of you holding it, about to insert it into the 4A machine now. So you have it, but at -1 quality, I think that opens up in the possibility in the fiction for me to like introduce complications on, failures on rolls, things like that.
Okay, cool.
So we get that. And then, like I said, the rest of the group is like led into the balcony. I think, Sellers picks a spot and like pats like a cushion near him for Siegfried to take a spot. And then, Rebus Actual steps forward to the front of the balcony, and I think the screens kind of mounting the walls and ceiling of the 4A arena all transform into, I think there are like drone cameras floating through the air that are all like facing him. He starts speaking, and suddenly his voice is amplified. Friends and guests of the Lost Crown Saloon, I thank you today for joining me on this momentous and exciting occasion. We have gathered here to watch a 4A competition of the highest caliber, with 6 of the greatest players on Ember coming together to display their prowess and ability on the battlefield. And what a battlefield! And he claps his hands, and suddenly this gridded green and blue glass floor, hums and bursts to life. And rising from it are, is a holographic topography, in full definition and color. This, miniature a miniature, right? It's the size of like I said, like almost a football arena here. In here, it's this miniature like map of this imagined landscape. Gestures in a big sweeping, gesture before him as this board comes to life. And he says, "The Diadem Royale, a custom game board built specifically for this event." And I think we get a sweeping camera like view of like this arena is broken up into like 5 kind of segments. And I'm thinking here, honestly, very much of like a Fortnite map, where it's like very distinct biomes that are kind of like just like slices that are like kind of flow into each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so the camera sweeps over. There's the creeping mire, and it's this like bog and swamp area, which then kind of flows into the twisting riverlands, which is kind of like grassy plains cut up with these raging rivers and streams. And then that shifts fluidly into the Gunsmoke Peaks, and it's this kind of like ominous looking mountain range, which again, you transfer again, and there is the magma faults, and this is like the lava level, right? There's like hissing sulfurous vents, and there are streams of lava, and then this flows into completing the circle. This is the ancient dwellings, and it is like an urban environment full of like crumbling ruins.
That's called Tomato Town.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Poggers.
And Rebus says, "I know outside the walls of this fair city, a great war rages on between vast powers. And I know that many here today find themselves drawn in alliance to some of those same powers. But today and here, we are united in our love of the great game. We leave those external conflicts at the door and we turn our sights towards the glory yet to be won on the board." And he looks around. "Let us bring our hands together and give a cheer for our competitors tonight. May the battle today be fierce, fair, and full of excitement. Cheers to you, players, and to each of you in the crowd. We are excited to have you here tonight for the Lost Crown Saloon's Diadem Royale." And he claps his hands again as people start clapping, and fireworks go off on the side of the thing. And I think the 6 pods, the pilot pods, now rise up, and you are all kind of like seated. The topographical arena is laid out in front of you. I think it comes up to like waist height from where you're at. One by one, the pilots begin to pull on their VR headsets. I think, Rebus goes back to his seat. And I realize I didn't come up with a name for announcement characters, but I mentioned there are probably like 2 announcers who are like kind of like, classic sports announcers who are narrating this thing as it's happening. It's like Gurm Lightly, and I don't know. Anybody got a second name for a sportscaster here?
Herod.
Gurm Lightly and Herod Selector are your announcers tonight.
Nice.
Gurm Lightly here, and as we all know, the competitors tonight will be assigned a random position starting in the arena, and they'll have to find out where their fellow opponents are, take them out one by one to be the last standing in the Diadem Royale.
Now, are there any reasons that these players would be given specific spots on this map?
Now, it's a great question, Herod, but of course, we don't want any player to have an unfair advantage. Obviously, a dedicated marksman, someone like Sunder Fairside, would love to be in the Gunsmoke Peaks, where she can really get a great position on her opponents and kind of see them coming from a distance. But unfortunately, it's down to a roll of the dice where they're going to end up today.
Well, let the dice lie where they may. I am so excited for this.
As am I. And of course, there's a special feature here in the arena. As the clock ticks down and as opponents are eliminated, there's a chance that unexpected elements will be introduced in the environment to increase the excitement and danger for each pilot. So hopefully we'll get to see 1 or 2 of those tonight before the match is over.
Really big show.
There's a third announcer. I've got a little head on my shoulder, and he's talking about that's Gurm Heavy.
Yeah. Gurm Lightly and Gurm Heavily as the smaller of the 2.
And I assume Rhodes is putting on the helmet.
Yeah, and I think so 6-way Royale, their machines are. Is it fair to assume that this is the machines that they would pilot, spec'd to a real thing?
For some of them definitely don't pilot mechs. So there's a real
interesting.
Yeah, not every 4A pilot is a mech pilot. Some of these people are just gamers.
Cool. I think Rhodes dons. I mean, we can handle this however you want. I mean, you're in the driver's seat, but I think as the holographic projection like loads up. I think it resembles the Redshift. It's like a low poly version.
Is it like embarrassingly low? Like,
I don't think
is
it's
it
like
visually more fucked up than like what your opponents might be?
I think that like probably the odds are stacked a little against. I'm like a guest entrant. I think it is like the red. It's close as they had on stock. Like so. I think it's like a bipedal mech outfitted with like a pretty standard armament, and then whatever I managed to pull off of Sphinx is like lurking. And I think that at least in my idea for that that flashback was that it's like a switch that can be thrown. It's not like a constant, but I guess you can tell me differently.
Yeah, that works for me. Let's talk a little bit about how this is going to work, and then we can kind of get back into the flow of play. So I know we talked a little bit of this off mic, but the way that we're going to do this, we're going to use the temporary vehicle rules that exist in the book for when you sort of steal an enemy mech or something like that. Basically, the way that works is that you are going to have a 6-segment clock that represents Rhodes's borrowed mech, or in this case, his foray projection. And this 6-segment clock will replace the harm or the damage track that you have with your normal mech. So it'll track, when it fills, your borrowed mech, your foray projection will be destroyed. And to push yourself in this mech, you will mark 2 ticks on it to push yourself in the same way that normally you would exhaust a quirk.
Okay.
And by the rules, it's also 3 ticks to resist a consequence. I think in this case, since you are not actually piloting a borrowed vehicle, but because you are kind of piloting this digital construction, we will maybe use like the pilot resist rules for resisting consequences, because I think that'll be a little bit more generous to you. But the other thing here is that we're not going to, I don't want to like do this as like a blow by blow, like Rhodes having 5 mech fights in a row and us like following each of those, like, because that's gonna, that's a lot of narrative time. So I think instead, the way that we'll play this is like a pretty zoomed out in terms of the action on the foray board. I might ask you like where you're going next and kind of like what you're doing. And I think we'll kind of like talk through some of these encounters. But I think that we will be doing these as like, single rolls or, a roll or 2, depending on how they play out, and kind of zoom out to like have those rolls stand in for an entire encounter. And
I have one question.
Yeah.
On the temporary vehicle rules, it mentions you gain effect when controlling a temporary vehicle with higher tier than your squad.
Yeah.
What am I assuming we're even playing field? Like this is the projection is the same tier?
I would say that the tier is your tier. I don't think we're gonna deal too much with like difference in tier during the foray battle, just because that's like another layer of granularity that I'm not necessarily trying to dig into too much. And I think first thing to do, why don't you just give me 1d6 here, just to figure out which of the areas on the map you start out in first.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. It's a 5.
That is a 5. Rhodes, you pull on the helmet, and as you do, the screens light up in your vision, and it is suddenly as if you are, it's not quite right because it's not what you're actually doing, but it's as if you are in the cockpit of a mech. That is like visually what you were seeing, and like you have a physical control board in front of you, and it's like positioning in your vision lines up with your actual positioning, like physically in front of you in this like little pod you are in. But your vision alights at first on the kind of like rolling sulfur smoke around you, and the blasted like volcanic rockscape around you, and like the orange glow of magma rivers as they run along you. And you are in the volcanic plains known as the magma faults. And this is where Rhodes has first landed in the arena. And I think, we see this vision from Rhodes' perspective. Cut to in the box. You guys are seeing, you can see this, the action down below you, which is like on a big enough scale that you can get a sense of where people are at and what's happening. But I think also all of the screens around you are cutting between different close-ups on like, where the different mechs have all kind of spawned in. And I think there's probably also some kind of screen on like the table inset in front of you that you're able to like shift and control which camera you're viewing, so you can follow the mech you're most interested, or the pilot you're most interested in seeing play. I think Sellers Montag looks over to you, Siegfried, and he's like, "So it begins."
The game is afoot.
For some reason, like the image of like I'm stuck on the Fortnite school bus, like whatever, like dropping down. So it's whatever. Like I imagine, kind of like hero landing, right? Like into the magma faults here. I think the first thing I would do is just put out a pulse, like scan pulse. What is nearby? Can I pick up any pings?
Yeah, why don't we start there, right? This is like gathering information, risky standard to begin with because you are like in a combat position. There's only 5 areas. There's 6 combatants. 2 combatants are starting in the same zone, probably. So there's always a chance that like there's a risk here in like taking the time to like start pinging out. So why don't you give me like this sounds like a risky standard scan.
Okay, cool. That's 1d6 for me. So let me.
You could push yourself by taking 2 ticks on your mech clock, but I don't know if you really want to do that yet.
You're crazy for that one. It's a 2.
It's a 2.
Going good.
All right. So on a 2, I think, we get like a drone camera shot circling around Rhodes' position on the magma faults, right? And like, some kind of like scanner, like antenna or something coming out and like, we see the visual representation of scanning taking place as an action. And then like that shot, kind of does like the thing where it like zooms out just a little bit and we see we're not looking at it actually anymore in the simulation. We're looking at like the screen in front of Siegfried, Carta, and Sellers Montag. And then that screen cuts to a view of a different pilot or a different machine. And this machine is a like squat, reverse-legged unit that's a gunmetal gray that has no like arms, but is like loaded down with turrets and rocket launchers and this just like huge array of boosters at the back. And I think, Sellers Montag leans over to you, Siegfried, and says, that's the Cacophony, Perel 3-Tide. She's a real ace, a classic 4A champion.
Yes, but does she have any real-life experience?
Well, we'll see how those 2 things match up. And you look back at the camera, which is, this Cacophony unit is full brute like booster array skating over like a river of lava. It is in the magma faults as well. And suddenly, standing still, scanning, Rhodes' position is lit up by like the explosion of like micro missiles and Gatling gunfire that start like tearing up the magma around him as Perel 3-Tide comes screaming into the area with a like sort of full on blitzkrieg, right? They're just like these like rockets and missiles starting to fire off. And so I think just off the start, on a complete failure, we're going to tick 1 segment on the Rhodes clock as some of these explosions rock the holographic representation of the redshift. And we see Perel, coming in for this big attack. So like I said, I don't want to like zoom. I want to zoom out here.
Totally.
I don't want to get like a blow by blow, but like how does Rhodes react? How does Rhodes try and deal with this surprise ambush?
I think like 2 things are happening at the same time, which is like, Rhodes is on the controls, like monitoring, the scan pulse, like on the radar or whatever. You're watching the kind of radar band like move across the map. And it's like as Rhodes is looking at the display, it's just like ping, 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 ping. And like as, the radar hits come up, suddenly, right, like this like rocket fall is like coming down. I think Rhodes would like gun it straight forward, like just charge in. And I think as doing that is going to like, I'm imagining this as these are coming across like some sort of magma river here, right? Or like flowing. I think one of the like armament on this projection would like let off like an explosive round, like leveled at this magma river. My goal here is to just kick up like basically like a ton of this magma and just charge through it and try and cross like on a charge with the Cacophony.
So what does that look like here? What do you think you're rolling for this?
I think this is probably like a maneuver roll. My thought here is like I'm going to kick up all this magma and just like blast through it and try and make like a melee hit on the Cacophony while it's closing under the cover of Rocketfall.
Sure. Yes, this is I think a maneuver risky standard here, right?
Okay, I have 2 in maneuver, so I'm rolling 2d6. That's a 5.
All right. What does it look like? How does Rhodes defeat the cacophony, right? Let's like zoom out of here.
Oh yeah, totally. Like this is down pat in my head, which is like this kind of explosive round hits this magma river and just kicks up a bunch of this molten stone. And I think like it like explodes in here. So I think like in this, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a tide of like magmas just sort of like falling at the cacophony on the other side of this. And like in that kind of, like these like bombs of magma falling, the redshift here just like kind of explodes through it, and I think pulls probably like a wrist mounted, I don't know, like essentially like a small blade, right? Like a melee, like a laser sword, a beam saber,
something like that. Yeah.
Just kind of pushing forward into charge, and I think on a 5, I mean, let me know if I'm wrong on this, I think makes contact.
Yeah, I think there's like this heavy armor plating, like that's holstering all of these like rocket launchers and missile launchers. Like I said, I really want to zoom this out. I think this is like, the fight is in this role. I think you find, there's like a reactor spot that like you're able to like maneuver that blade into between the armor plating coming through this like blast.
Yeah, totally. Upward slash, the maneuverability suite, able to like kind of push around the side and I think just like kind of cleave off those like missile launchers.
And then I think we see like missile pods exploding, right? Like one after another. It sets off a chain reaction in the mech. And then there's like a larger explosion. There's a plume of black smoke going up in the sky. And I think, suddenly the screens flash with like Perel 3 Tide eliminated. And her like pilot chair sinks back down into the arena, and I'm sure, like Gurm lightly on the screen, like, ooh, an early decisive victory for the ring champion Rhodes Rampart as he takes out the fan favorite Perel 3 Tide.
Dez is standing up in his chair. He's waving his program in the air. He's flapping his little wings.
That was a mixed success. So I am going to create, calling this mystery clock. And I'm taking it 1 out of 4 segments. But I think the nature of what's happening is at the moment unclear. But something has happened as a result of this victory. And when this clock fills, something else will happen.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like cut to Jumbotron or something of like, the in cockpit cam, like on Rhodes or whatever, like probably see like some little smirk there. And I think he'd say it's like easier to beat an opponent trying to win.
And then, I think you get like Sellers Montag, looking like a little bit shocked. And I think there's some shouting, right, in the booth in general. I think, Ignis Tragat, you can hear or guess at least, had some money on Perel 3 Tide, really thought this was going to be his ticket.
All right. In the uproar, Carta wants to kind of try to get in closer to Sellers, and he just wants to ask, like, now, what are the odds that one of the players who, I don't know, shared the opening location with goes on to win? How is that going to affect the rest of this game? I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm just seeing what I'm going to walk away with cash-wise, like, where my money is, but what should I expect going forward? Jesus. I mean, she was slated to, I saw second at least, but just playing to the like, I am so dumb. What, all the odds to this kind of stuff, bud? Like, wow, everyone's blown away.
That?
Can you? Jesus, we're all shook up. Me too.
That's great. So this is working on the Sellers like friendship clock, right?
Just again, especially like with maybe this first kind of upset, both like playing a fact that like, oh well, I knew that we had some good stuff coming in with Rhodes, but like that's an upset I wasn't expecting to start on the same tile. Like, whew, that's got to be some bad odds to like start with,
So this is, I think, controlled standard. I guess what are you using here? Is this consort still?
I think it's consort. Yeah, that's the.
Yeah, I think it's like on the edge of sway or consort, but I'm down to give you consort. So that's controlled standard to begin with. You have 1 dice in consort. Desmond, are you assisting here? Are you going to lend a hand?
Absolutely, I'm going to lend a hand.
Oh, this is a perfect place for us to.
What does that assist look like?
I think I'm probably saying it's like, well, for someone who's got nothing to fight for, he sure is fighting pretty hard, wouldn't you say, Mr. Sellers?
So why don't you take a stress, and you can give Carta. I assume you probably want the extra dice here, right?
Yes.
So Desmond, if you want to spend a stress, you can give an extra dice to Carta, which will put us at 2d6 to start.
Yeah. Alrighty, rolling. 2 4s.
That will complete the Friends with Sellers clock.
I love making a friend, thank God.
And I think, in his enthusiasm, right, he grabs you kind of and brings you a little closer to him. I guess it's probably Carta, right? He's like, I guess it's Siegfried's next to him. He grabs Siegfried. He brings Siegfried a little closer and kind of shakes him a little. And he's like, can you believe it? He's like, yeah, I thought you were all a lot of big talk, but your man really has something to him, doesn't he? And I think, Python, the bodyguard robot, kind of moves almost to like try and separate you two a little bit. And he kind of shakes him off with like a shrug. And he's like, he waves over to the waiter and he's like, a round on me. This is beyond the pale. I would have never thought. And, he's looking at you, Carter. He's like, odds-wise, the last time you saw two pilots start in the same location and had one of them, win to go on to win the whole thing, this is a huge mark in his favor, just statistically. If you can win your first encounter, your odds of winning the following encounters just increase exponentially.
This is incredible. To learn from one of the best, this article is going to shine. I am amazed to be sitting next to Sellers Montag for a moment like this. I cannot wait. The people are going to eat this up. The underdog coming up to beat the professional player. Wow. Eat this drink.
I told you, Mr. Sellers, we're only alive because Rhodes Rampart lets us. Stay alive.
That's a pretty different fiction in the ring. Rhodes is a fascist.
He's a maniac.
In control of the ring.
We're very scared.
But that was a 4, right?
Yeah, 2 4s.
So there is a consequence here, which is that I'm going to tick this mystery clock one more segment.
All right.
And I'll give you a little bit more here. Booth has kind of exploded in activity. Everyone is chattering with each other. Everyone is kind of like, oh my God, can you believe them? This just happened. What an early victory, what an early upset in this whole engagement. And so everyone is kind of, focused on this, except for one person in the box, which is the Concordat cleric, Almurikiet. You can see she is kind of sat slightly away from everyone else. She has one of these screens in front of her as well. And hers is focused clearly on Pallas again, who we can see, this is not something Rhodes would see, but we can see that Pallas again is in the twisting riverlands, standing amidst like one of these raging rivers. But she has her eyes closed, and she is, I guess, somewhere between like muttering and chanting to herself, like eyes closed, hands clasped around like her pendant, doing some kind of like prayer or invocation with the screen turned to Pallas again. But she's not actually watching kind of the commotion.
And we can all see her do this?
You can, but it's not necessarily like, it doesn't stand out because everyone else is like yelling and is excited.
So it's not like an elbow someone to be like, I don't know if her prayers are going to save her now. I mean, look at those, is it that kind of thing? Or
it could be, she's like very just quiet and kind of off to her side, but she is like in this kind of like, this almost like trance, like chanting, and muttering.